Bottom line viewers, it's Mitch here with another week of the NFL upcoming. It's NFL Week 2. This is my Week 2 picks, straight up and against the spread. I'm going to give you every pick for every game in the NFL, my preview for every game, what matchups I think are going to be interesting, what I see in each game, the determining factors for each game this week in Week 2. And I always say that Week 1 isn't the most difficult week. It's actually Week 2. Because as NFL fans, if you're in the NFL media, if you're someone that covers the NFL, you often overreact to the NFL. It just happens. If you watch football, you overreact to football. That's just what happens. So in week number 2, that's what's going to happen to a lot of people. They're going to overreact. And honestly, what we see in week 1 always isn't an indication for what we are going to see for the rest of the NFL season. So, give me your predictions as I go through the games. How I do this is I'll go through a few games, then I will get to the comment section, answer all your questions, answer anything you guys have for me, and then I will continue to move on to 3 or 4 more games and go back to the comment section. If you haven't already, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL picks and previews just like this. Last week in week number 1, I went 11-4-1 with my picks. Of course, the one being the Detroit Lions tying with the Arizona Cardinals. I had the Lions winning that game, and unfortunately, the Lions absolutely blew it. More on that in a little bit. I did end up switching one game last week after Wednesday, which was the Minnesota Vikings over Atlanta, and I ended up being right in that switch. And versus the spread, I'm pretty happy with how I did against the spread. I was 9-6-1, and to me, if you're anything over 50%, that's pretty impressive versus the NFL. So let's get right into the picks. And the first game that I am going to pick is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Carolina Panthers. This is the Thursday night game. The Carolina Panthers played the LA Rams. Very close matchup. More on that in terms of the Rams in a little bit. But when you take a look at the Panthers side of things, the Panthers kind of beat themselves in that game. That was one of the games that I did get wrong. I thought that the Panthers at home would be able to beat the defending NFC champions, but they weren't able to really protect the football. Okay, so when you look at it early in that game, their mistakes ended up losing them the football game. So when you take a look at it, they had 3 mistakes, 3 turnovers, 1 interception by Cam Newton, 1 fumble by DJ Moore, and then 1 half blame on Cam Newton, half blame on DJ Moore, throwing it backwards behind the line of scrimmage. It creates a fumble, and of course the Rams jumped on it. So when you take a look at those 3 drives from the LA Rams versus the Panthers, once they took over the football, they scored 13 points off of turnovers. One of them was a 10-yard drive on 2 plays and a Malcolm Brown touchdown. The other 2 were field goals. 33 yards on 9 plays. That was a 56-yard field goal, by the way, by Craig the Leg, which is not exactly a normal thing for an NFL kicker to do. A 56-yard field goal is pretty difficult. And then a 7-play, 26-yard drive for another field goal by the Rams. So 13 points off of fumbles, interceptions. When you take a look at it, the Rams really offensively only scored 17 points in that game. That wasn't off of turnovers. That wasn't in great field position. When you look at the Panthers offense, Christian McCaffrey accounted for 61% of their yardage versus the Rams. They moved the ball fairly well, but again, they kind of shot themselves in the foot. DJ Moore should have had a better game. Curtis Samuel didn't have as good as a game that you would have thought. McCaffrey was unreal. I believe he was at least close to 200 yards in that game, if not over 200 yards in both the receiving and rushing department. I think Cam Newton has a big bounce back game here. When you take a look at how he's done against the Bucs in the past, he's dominated Tampa Bay. He scored 29 total touchdowns in his career versus Tampa Bay. That's the most against any team in his career. 20 passing, 9 rushing versus the Bucs. So I expect Cam Newton to have a big game here. It's again at home, and usually when Cam has a bad game, he bounces back with a good game. And that certainly wasn't his best game versus the Rams. Even if he did make some plays there, he was inaccurate. He did have that interception. He didn't make the key plays in the key moments for them to win that football game. This is also a McCoy revenge game, of course. So McCoy is coming into this game versus his old team, and he's probably looking at Jameis Winston like he wants to get after him. He wants to have a couple sacks versus his former team. Then you look at Tampa Bay. Okay, Tampa Bay didn't play as poorly as the score indicated last week. It was really just Jameis Winston. But honestly, Jameis Winston is the reason why you cannot pick the Bucs in this game. The Panthers are minus 6.5. I feel like that's a fair total. At some places it's minus 7. I will take the Panthers to win this game and also to cover at home versus Tampa Bay, a team that I feel like doesn't have the secondary to match up with the Panthers. They don't have the pass rush to contain Cam Newton. I feel like the Panthers will be able to score points in this game, and I think Jameis will cough up a couple more turnovers. They might not be pick sixes like last week, 2 of them last week, but they might just be enough to set up the Panthers to beat the spread here. So Panthers minus 6.5 and to win this game. The second game is the Baltimore Ravens versus the Arizona Cardinals. Right now it's minus 13.5 for Baltimore. And last week the Ravens probably had, if not the most impressive performance, it was right there with the Cowboys and with the Patriots for how well they played versus Miami. Now we expected them to beat Miami, everyone did, but to play the way they did, and specifically for Lamar Jackson to throw 5 touchdowns, was extremely impressive. So the Cardinals come into this game off a hot comeback victory where they can celebrate all they want, but they have to go to one of the toughest home fields in the league in Baltimore. They have to play a defense that's one of the best in the NFL. And if they would have gotten blown out last week, they would have had a lot of things to fix. Not necessarily after you come off a comeback victory. Maybe you gain confidence, maybe you gain momentum, but you don't necessarily have that in the back of your head where you need to prove yourself because you basically had a comeback tie. And I said victory a couple times there, but it was almost like a victory for the Cardinals because of how miraculous it was in Kyler Murray's effort. And that's the exact thing that I want to get across here. It was not Cliff Kingsbury. It was not the Cardinals' offensive scheme wearing down or absolutely destroying the Lions' defense and coming back in this football game. For one, it was Detroit Lions' flaws. And the second thing, it was just Kyler Murray being an absolute beast. Kyler Murray was uncontainable. And I believe, like I said in the scouting report for Kyler Murray, like I said in the draft process for Kyler Murray, this guy's a legitimate star quarterback in this league in a couple of years. He has the arm, he has the touch, he has the accuracy, he has the mobility. He's just a weapon. And he also has that clutch factor. He has that leadership factor. And I don't think that will be enough versus the Ravens. I just think what happened to the Lions was their defensive line was worn out by the fourth quarter, and the Cardinals were able to make big plays and come back in the game. And I think Matt Patricia poorly schemed that game in the second half. He didn't blitz enough, he didn't send enough pressure, but with the Ravens, they certainly won't make that mistake that the Lions did. They will pressure, they will go after the quarterback, and the Ravens have the corners to match up with the Cardinals easily. They should be able to take some of these big plays out of the game that the Lions did give up. I think Lamar has another chance to have a really good game passing the football because he is playing one of the worst secondaries in the league without Patrick Peterson. So that being said, Ravens, I think, will win this game. When it comes to the spread's interesting, but if I'm being honest, I'm also taking the Ravens to cover the 13.5 because I think the game is going to unfold the same way it did versus Detroit for the Cardinals, except there won't be a comeback. So that's what I see from the Ravens this week versus the Cardinals. All right, the third game of the week here to start it off is the 49ers versus the Bengals. Now, the board is incorrect. I just want to point that out. It says San Francisco minus 1.5. It's actually Cincinnati minus 1.5. So just keep that in mind. Don't really pay attention to that part of it. So San Francisco travels to Cincinnati. This, to me, is maybe the most difficult game to predict of this week because we don't have a lot to go on when it comes to Zach Taylor and the Cincinnati offense. We don't have a lot to go off when it comes to the San Francisco regime of Jimmy Garoppolo and the new defense that they have. So it's very difficult to really see how these two teams will match up. But I did like what I saw from both of these teams in week one. The 49ers defense, I think it might be real. I think it might actually be really good. Now, they played very well versus Tampa Bay. Like I said, 2 pick sixes. They just were in the face of Jameis Winston, causing bad mistakes, pressure constantly. I thought Richard Sherman played very well at corner. I thought Witherspoon played very well at corner. Nick Bosa played very well for his first game. DeForest Buckner was in there as well. I just think San Francisco, they did all this defensively without Kwan Alexander, who got kicked out early in the game in what was supposed to be a revenge game for them. And then you also take a look at the fact that they were without Jason Verrett and Jimmy Ward, and I don't know if they'll play this week, but I'm just saying, into the future, you could count on San Francisco having a pretty good defense because they've been doing this, or at least did that against the Tampa Bay offense that a lot of people expected to be pretty quality this year with Bruce Arians, and they dominated that game for the most part. Now, when taking a look at it, there was the pick sixes, so what does that say about San Francisco's offense? Well, San Francisco's offense was okay. It wasn't great. The big thing that I do want to say is they were effective, but they weren't effective in the red zone. 2 of their touchdowns actually got called back, maybe even 3. I think 3 of them got called back, and 2 of them were to Kittle. So Kittle had 2 touchdowns alone that were called back, and then a third one was called back. So if they execute in the red zone, you're adding another 12 points there, potentially, to their total, and that could have been an even bigger blowout, and you could see San Francisco being favored in this game if those penalties didn't negate the points that San Francisco scored in the red zone. Now, when shifting to the Bengals, I really think it's going to be interesting to see how they do in week 2 of the Zach Taylor offense. Week 1 was really impressive. I like what I saw from a creativity standpoint. They really were able to attack the Seahawks secondary. They were able to block up front. I thought Boyd played very well. Obviously, John Ross played very well. I'm intrigued to see if Joe Mixon can run against the San Francisco wide 9 front, which they have gone to this year instead of more of a traditional Seahawks type of defense up front where they play more of the cover 3 style of defense. If they do play that style of defense, I am a little concerned because I think Cincinnati has shown that they can pick that apart. So if San Francisco can stick to, what they've been doing and hopefully don't rely so much on the cover 3 and the cover 3 match and all that sort of stuff that the Seahawks do, the Seahawks scheme, so to speak, then I think San Francisco will set themselves up better to play the Bengals than how the Seahawks set themselves up to play the Bengals. Because the Bengals were able to scheme their way to finding big plays against the Seahawks. The other things I want to look at is Ronald Jones had a good game against San Francisco, so Joe Mixon has a chance to have a good game here. The 49ers did have 11 penalties last game, so look out for a little bit of maybe chippiness or just kind of not good discipline from the San Francisco 49ers. If they can clean that up, that would help. I really liked Andy Dalton against Seattle. I thought he was very comfortable in the new offense. The timing was there with everything. Cincinnati's defensive line, I tweeted this. If you want to follow me, at Mitch Milani on Twitter, I tweeted this. I think Cincinnati's defensive line looked really good in that game. They were able to get after Russell Wilson. Will they be able to do that at home versus Jimmy Garoppolo? That's a question. San Francisco has a better offensive line than Seattle does, but if Cincinnati's able to play and dominate the way they did up front with Sam Hubbard, who played really well in that game, then I think there's a chance for Cincinnati to win this game, and ultimately that's where I think it comes down to. Okay, so is it going to be San Francisco's defensive line that dominates Cincinnati's offensive line, or is it going to be Cincinnati's defensive line that dominates San Francisco's offensive line? And when I look at it, I am going to say that the San Francisco 49ers win this game, and I will take the 1.5 points because I believe in the San Francisco front a little bit more than Cincinnati. Even if this game is in Cincinnati, I was coming into the season a bigger believer in San Francisco, so I need to stick to that. Plus, the 49ers didn't play very well last week and were still able to win by 2 touchdowns. So, and the Bengals played really well and weren't able to win. So that says to me that the 49ers are probably more talented than the Bengals. So I will take the 49ers. All right. So I've spent quite a bit of time on the first 3 games here. So I will take a look at the comments very quickly here. Let's take a look at the comments. Let's go. The one thing that I don't like here is that I'm not really able to scroll up. So I'm going to try to scroll up. Dang it. Okay. Just give me a second here. I'm going to pull it up on YouTube. So Bob Money says that the Bengals offensive line is going to get crushed. Black Falcon says, should I trade Nick Chubb for Michael Thomas? It depends on how your roster looks. If you feel like you're stacked at running back and you want to get a receiver that's elite, then go ahead and make the trade. If you feel like Nick Chubb, you haven't seen the best from him, which I believe you haven't, then keep him. And if you feel like you're weak at the running back position, then, keep Nick Chubb. All right. So the furthest I could scroll back was to Ryan Shaw saying, with the crying laughing face. So Trivia says, honestly, Bucks will lose, but I don't see Bruce Arians as a head coach leading the Bucks to lower than a 6-10 record. Honestly, I don't think the Bucks are a football team that can even win 6 games. I just don't know. Unless Jameis Winston finds the off switch for the pick sixes and the turnovers, I don't see how they can be a better football team than a 5-11 or 4-12. Would love a comparison video of Winston and Mariota to see where they both are in their career. That's a good idea, actually. I'll take a look at doing that. Trivia said, when is Pat Pete playing? I think he's suspended until week 6 or week 8. It's rather a 6 or 8 game suspension. Somebody in the chat can clear that up. Turtle says, I think the Cardinals win 20-10. Wow. Ultra says Ravens 31-20. Sebastian says Ravens 30, Cardinals 20. Sammy says Ravens 34-17. Graham says Ravens take it 30-20. Robot Guy says 27-17 Ravens. So most people are picking the Ravens. Whatever's Clever says Ravens 70-3. Nemskit says Ravens winning 38-27. If I had to give a score, I would probably say it's going to be a little bit lower scoring than that. I'd probably go like 27-13, 27-10 for the Ravens if I had to say a score. Okay, what else here? Trivia says Cardinals defense is underrated. Chris says the Lions tanked the play calling. Kyler faced a prevent defense for the 4th quarter. I hope he scores. He's a number 1 pick. AKD Midnight says this guy should be working, or this dude should be working in the NFL Network. I appreciate that. Guys, nothing about 9/11, especially today. I don't want the conspiracy stuff. Let's stick to football, all right? We already have enough in the football realm with the Antonio Brown and the Tyreek Hill and all that sort of legal stuff. I don't really want to talk about all that other stuff. So, 49ers will win this game, but I think it will be closer than most people think, 30-21. Well, the Vegas would indicate that they believe it's going to be pretty close. Ultra says 49ers 27, Bengals 20. Mike says San Fran 49-11. Trivia says William Jackson is a beast. Oh, one thing I didn't bring up for the 49ers is, are they going to play Dante Pettis? Who's going to step up at wide receiver? I want to see that answer because I feel like the 49ers are good enough to win some games even without Jimmy Garoppolo having very good games. Like, if he's just managing the game, they could still win games. But if they want to get to the playoffs this year, they need a receiver to step up, and that would coincide with Jimmy Garoppolo stepping up. Sebastian says Panthers 25-17. Ultra says Tyler Lockett or Jamison Crowder. PPR, this is tough. Okay, I would go, honestly, if you're looking for a safe play, Crowder is your guy because he's going to catch a lot of passes. But if you want a boom or bust sort of guy, it's Lockett. The Seahawks don't pass a lot, so it's kind of tough with them. But you did draft Lockett over Crowder, so if you wanted to go with Lockett, then I would understand that. Awesome Zone says, can I get a shout out? By the way, who do you think will make the Super Bowl? Bottom line view. I did pick Patriots Eagles before the season, so I'll stick to that for now. All right, let's continue our picks here with the next game being the Chargers -2.5 versus the Detroit Lions. Now, this game is interesting because the Detroit Lions were a team that should have beaten the Cardinals. They should have beaten the Cardinals pretty easily, honestly, and people would be talking about this game differently. On the other hand, the Chargers played the Colts in a game that was very, very back and forth. Adam Vinatieri basically lost the Colts the game, and I'm interested to hear what people would have said if the Colts would have went into LA and beat the Chargers. So it's two teams that I think are very even, and the spread indicates that, with the Chargers being only -2.5, which is less than a field goal. So this is a very difficult game to predict because of the outcomes of the first week. The biggest thing I'm worried about when it comes to the Lions is Matt Patricia. I think Matt Patricia fully, entirely, 100% lost them the game, or, again, was the reason why they tied versus the Cardinals. I just consider a tie a loss, so there you go. And for the Lions, I think that they actually have a pretty good matchup here with the Chargers. When you take a look at what both teams do well and what both teams want to do, I feel like it favors the Lions. So the Lions are a team that I feel like want to run the ball, they want to be physical, and they want to establish the line of scrimmage. When you look at the Chargers, they're more of a speed-based team. They want to pass the ball. They want to get the ball out fast on offense, and defensively, they want to be able to stop the pass with all their defensive backs, and they want to be able to rush the passer. When I look at it, I feel like the Lions should be able to win the matchup versus the Chargers' offensive line, specifically at home. And then I also think when you look at it on the other side of the ball, the Lions should be able to run the ball versus the Chargers. The Colts were able to. The Patriots were able to in the playoffs last year. I feel like Patricia looks at that tape and utilizes that tape on both sides of the ball to help him face the Chargers this year, because I don't feel like the Chargers have really changed much on either side of the ball. The thing for the Lions that where they might lose this game is if the Lions start getting into 3rd and longs, that's not a recipe to beat the Chargers. The Chargers are one of the best 3rd and long teams on defense in the league because they have Joey Bosa, they have Melvin Ingram, they have a good secondary. It's just not a good place to be in. So in manageable 3rd downs, the Lions will probably have a very good chance of winning this game. If they're not in those manageable 3rd downs, they will likely lose this game. Now, like I said, Chargers D is very fast, but they're not good versus the run, and that was proven once again. It hasn't changed with Marlon Mack having a big game versus them. Kerryon Johnson should have a big game. You also look at Darrell Bevell, who's a run-first coordinator, who I like what I saw from him in the first week outside of that whole Matt Patricia timeout thing. But I like what I saw from the Detroit offense for the most part. TJ Hawkinson looked great. Danny Amendola was utilized well. Kerryon Johnson needs to be better utilized, but I feel like everybody else played a good game. Matt Stafford looked good. And then you look at the Chargers. I have a lot of questions because Hunter Henry is now out for the season. Mike Williams is probably not going to play this game. That leaves Keenan Allen as the only reliable target outside of Austin Eckler, who's a running back. And you could put Darius Slay on Allen just to kind of neutralize him a little bit. So I think you guys know where I'm going with this one. I'm going with the Lions, surprisingly. The reason why I'm going with the Lions is because I feel like the Chargers are very banged up, both on the offensive line and on offense in general with their playmakers. And I feel like the Lions have something to prove this week after basically collapsing last week. Now, mentally, it could go backwards on them. I feel like Phillip Rivers had a lot of Phillip Rivers magic last game. Austin Eckler played very, very, very well and looked fantastic last week. Justin Jackson also looked very good. But, again, when I go back to it and when I look at strength versus weaknesses and when I look at how these teams match up on paper, I feel like the Lions match up very well versus the Chargers. And that's why I'm going with the Lions. I think the Chargers are a little bit overrated right now. and I feel like the Lions, because of what happened last week, are a little bit underrated. So I will be going with the Lions to win this game, and I will take the 2.5 points. That's probably my biggest upset overall this week. The next game is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Packers are getting the home respect, -2.5 here. They play Minnesota. Minnesota probably was the more impressive team in week 1, basically beating down Atlanta. But there were a lot of things that were very interesting about that Atlanta game, because the Vikings basically won the game at halftime and shut down, and they didn't do anything else. So they had the 2 interceptions from Matt Ryan. 2 of them were in basically the red zone. One of them was in the red zone, and one was a block punt, which set up the Vikings to basically score 2 touchdowns. And the Vikings didn't really pass the ball. Kirk Cousins did next to nothing in that game. He only had 98 yards passing. But Dalvin Cook, they were able to run the ball very well. They had 125 yards at halftime. Cook looked amazing. Cook looks like a top 5 running back right now. And when you look at the Packers, they dominated up front versus the Bears. Their defensive line was fantastic. The Bears found it really hard to pass or run the ball. They confused Mitch Trubisky. I don't think it will be as easy to confuse Kirk Cousins, but they could easily, if they could stop the run the Packers the way they did versus Chicago, then they're putting themselves in a good position, because that's what Minnesota wants to do. This is a good test for the Packers secondary versus Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, though. That's an interesting matchup. Jari Alexander versus Adam Thielen, I think, will be the matchup to watch there. On the other side of the ball, if the Vikings can get a pass rush like they did versus Atlanta and dominate in that fashion, which they did versus Atlanta and Matt Ryan versus Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay, then they set themselves up well. But again, the Vikings are on the road. At home, they're a much better team. At home, they can feed off the crowd. At home, they get the better pass rush. Green Bay is at home, and just when it comes to the divisional games between the Packers and the Vikings, I typically pick the team that's at home. I will do that in this game because I don't like picking against Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau Field for the first game, in Lambeau Field. So I am going to go with the Packers because I do feel like they will be able to slow down Dalvin Cook, at least to a certain degree. I do think that Aaron Rodgers will find some success in this game, at least more than he did versus Chicago. And I just think the Packers play better at home. So I'm going to go with the Packers, even though I think the Vikings are the slightly better team and slightly more talented. I just feel like the Vikings are not, they're not usually fantastic versus Aaron Rodgers. They're not usually, the Aaron Rodgers typically has the number of the Vikings. So I'm going to go with the Packers here. And this is interesting. The 2.5, I guess I'll take Green Bay to cover the 2.5 and say they win by at least a field goal, but that's certainly interesting. I could definitely go with the Vikings, and that might be one of those where the Packers win by 2 and I'm wrong. So I'm going to go with Green Bay regardless, though, because I just don't know. With the 2.5 is a difficult number. So I'm going to go with Green Bay for both. And the next game before we return to the comments is Jacksonville at Houston. Now, I know in some places, I think it's already 9 or 9.5 favored for the Texans, but I have it at 8.5 for the Texans. When I look at this game, I think it comes down to how does the Jacksonville defense bounce back after getting ripped apart versus Patrick Mahomes? And when I look at how Jacksonville has played versus Houston in the past, they played very well versus Deshaun Watson. They've gotten a lot of pressure versus Deshaun Watson, and they've been able to basically contain that offense. When I look at the strengths or the weaknesses of Houston and the strengths of Jacksonville, I feel like Jacksonville can make this game competitive, even with their backup rookie quarterback in this game. Gardner Minshew, I think, is not as bad as people think. When you looked at that game versus the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs' defense isn't very good, neither is the Texans' secondary. So if Jacksonville's able to at least give Minshew some time, I don't mind him in this game. I do feel like he can manage the game and keep it at least close. And when I look at Houston's offense, I mean, Watson spammed Hopkins. And I feel like Jacksonville has the corners to match up with Houston's receivers. They have the defensive line, and they were hitting Patrick Mahomes. That wasn't the issue. They were getting some pressure after Patrick Mahomes. It was breaking down in the back end because Andy Reid's a genius when it comes to scheming up versus that type of defense, which I warned Jacksonville, or not necessarily warning the Jaguars, but warning you guys that Jacksonville just doesn't match up from a scheme perspective versus Andy Reid and the Chiefs' offense. I feel like it matches up better versus Houston, though, and that's why I am going to take the Texans to win, but I'm going to take Jacksonville plus the 8.5 points in this game because I do feel like this game will be slightly lower scoring than people expect. Maybe I'm completely wrong here, but I do have enough belief in Jacksonville in a divisional game to keep this game competitive, and I do like enough of what I saw from Gardner Minshew to at least do some things. Plus, people are forgetting, if you look at that Chiefs game, man, so many weapons for Jacksonville. Leonard Fournette looked like Leonard Fournette. DJ Chark looked really impressive. D.D. Westbrook looked impressive. Chris Connolly looked good. They have receivers there to make big plays, and in just one play, Jacksonville has that type of speed and that type of talent in their receiving group that they can make big plays. So I'm going to go Jacksonville to keep it close, plus the 8.5, but the Texans to win just because Deshaun Watson is too much of a mismatch versus Gardner Minshew in this game. Plus it's in Houston, so they should be able to win this game. All right. Let's return to the comments before we get into the most ridiculous spread of the week, and that is the Patriots and the Dolphins. All right, let's get to the comments. Blue and Silver says, Hawkamania, referring to Hawkinson. Chris said, my lines, expect a focused team, Detroit at home, 27-17. Mike Trotter says, Lions, 21-17. Sebastian says, Chargers, 35-17. Stacy says, Chargers win 27-21. Chargers, 29-23, says Trivia. Ultra says, 26-17 Chargers. Lions win 26-20, says Kevin Durkant. Chargers are banged up, and I think they're not going to nearly as much noise as they did last year. Our Dreamer says Patricia's a goof over his head. Certainly seems that way. What else do we have here? Awesome Zone says Chargers win by a 2-point conversion. Mike Trotter says Barry Sanders might run for 250. If Barry Sanders was playing, I'd have more confidence in my pick for sure. Hunter Henry is not playing. I think he's out for the year. Or maybe he's not out for the season, but he's out for a long time. Ultra gives his 10 worst teams in the NFL. 23 Raiders, 24 Jags, 25 Jets, 26 Redskins, 27 Cardinals, 28 Broncos, 29 Bengals, 30 Bucks, 31 Giants, and 32 Dolphins. I think you definitely have the bottom 2 right. Maybe even the bottom 3. I honestly still think the Cardinals, I don't know. I think the Cardinals are definitely worse than the Bengals. I think the Bengals are better than the Cardinals and maybe the Broncos too. Vikings easy win, says Trevor. Sammy says Packers 23-20. Mike says 30-21. Chris says this might be a 42-10 thing. Vikings win. Stacy says I'll say Packers 30-21. Packers win, says Awesome Zone. Robot Guy says 28-24 Packers. Packers fans are going to be disappointed with the LaFleur offense. I will say I was not impressed with the LaFleur offense last week. Trivia says, remember when Dez had 16 touchdowns and was the best receiver in football? DeMarco Murray had 16 touchdowns and was the best running back in football. Cowboys should have won Super Bowl 49. I disagree. They would have lost to the Patriots. Ultra says Texans win 27-21. Texans win, says Awesome Zone. Turtle says 23-21. Minshew also almost makes a comeback. Trevor says Texans 2016. Van Life says this is the chat I've been waiting for, not the rumor trending BS on a loop. Thank you, my dude. No problem. Watson is going to get injured if Texans don't protect him better. I will say the Texans' offensive line did not look any better with Tunzel than it did without Tunzel. Maybe this much better, but not much better. Not much better. Is Aaron Jones going to have a horrible game? I don't know if he'll have a horrible game, but he's definitely not a great start this week. James says, so Mitch, you haven't seen my new video yet, have you? I think I at least looked at it, James. I think I at least looked at it. Ultra says, hey Mitch, did you see my top 10 teams? I don't think so. You can repost it if you like. Alright, let's get to the next game. Next game is New England versus Miami in Miami. Basically the danger zone for Patriots fans. I don't know what to call it. Like it's just like the Patriots every year seem to struggle in Miami. It's an actual real thing. Tom Brady, I think it's like the only place he has a losing record. I think the other one might be Denver. I'm not sure if he has a losing record there still, but like Miami has been such a weird place for the Patriots. But yet the Dolphins are so bad that it makes this line actually feasible. -19 for the New England Patriots in this game. I actually did bet on this game already. I bet on this game with the Patriots -16.5 because I saw the number not at 3 scores. So I took it at 3 scores, hoping they would win it by 17, which I think they will win by 17. But to ask them to win by 20 points is a lot of points. Do I go with the Dolphins or do I go with the Patriots? Okay, I am taking the Patriots to win the game. I don't know if Antonio Brown is playing or not. I don't know. But I will pick the Dolphins +19 because first, it's a lot of points. And second, it's the Miami thing. Third, Brian Flores was the Patriots defensive coordinator. He knows Bill Belichick well. He knows the team well. And typically Patriot coaches that leave do well against Belichick because they understand the way that he thinks and they understand how to attack the Patriots better than other coaches do who are outside of that building. That being said, I also feel like the Dolphins lost as bad as they did last week because they weren't prepared for what the Ravens were throwing at them, which is why I loved that bet last week for the Ravens. This week, I think the Dolphins, just because they will have a better idea of what the Patriots are doing, not because they're talented in any fashion or form, they will keep this game within 20 points. It will probably be 30. It will probably be like 30 to 14, 30 to 10. It's going to be something in that regard. 30 to 9, 30 to 13. It's going to be something like that. But I don't know. Actually, when I'm thinking about it, though, just thinking about the score, like, I don't know. I might have to go with the Patriots. Because I don't know how the the thing is, I feel like the Dolphins' defense can do better than they did versus the Ravens because of the Flores thing. But then I feel like the defense for the Patriots is going to straight up dominate the Dolphins' offense. Okay, yeah, I'm going to switch that. I'm going to go Patriots -19 just because of the way I'm thinking in my head the scores are going to be. Like, if the Patriots win 34-10, that's a 24-point spread. If they win 34-13, that's 21 points. If they win 34-14, that's 20 points. If they win 31-10, that's 21 points. So you know what I'm saying? Like, if they win 38-17, that's why I'm going to go Patriots for both. But when I was originally thinking about it, I felt like the Dolphins would be better, but then the number, I do feel like the Patriots probably do cover just based on the score and based on their defense, which, by the way, best secondary in the league. You could argue the Patriots at least have a top 5 defense. They might have the best defense in the league. All right. The next game, Buffalo versus the Giants. Buffalo is -2. Now, Buffalo should have beat the Jets. I want you guys to understand this. Buffalo should have beat the Jets by at least 2 touchdowns. Josh Allen had 3 or 4 turnovers in that game. The Jets barely scored any points in that game. They had a pick 6. They were put in good position. The Buffalo defense was dominant on the road. And the Giants versus Dallas looked like absolute dog poo versus a team that they know. I do not understand. Maybe I am missing something completely. I do not understand why Buffalo is only -2. This is one of my favorite bets of the week. I love the Bills versus the Giants because I don't see Saquon going off versus this defense. I don't think Eli will have anywhere to throw versus this defense. When I look at the Giants' defense, their secondary is a big-time weakness. They can't really tackle. They struggled mightily versus Dak Prescott in the deep passing attack and play action of the Cowboys. I think that same thing will carry over versus the speedy receivers like John Brown of the Bills and the way that Josh Allen can throw the deep ball. So I see the Bills actually scoring close to 27 to 30 points in this game, and I see the Giants struggling to score. I think this might be a blowout. I'm going to take the Bills here. I think people are underestimating the Bills because the game versus the Jets was a comeback, but the comeback really was because the Bills were playing really, really bad, and not because the Jets were playing well, and not because the Bills are a bad team. It was more just bad play by them. And then they showed that they were the better, more dominant team by coming back and winning 17-16. So I have the Bills winning this game versus the Giants. I also have them covering. I really, really like that game. And the next game is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Oakland Raiders. The Kansas City Chiefs demolished the Jags. It was over by the end of the first half almost, maybe the beginning of the third quarter. Patrick Mahomes was able to eat against this defense in Jacksonville, and Patrick Mahomes looked phenomenal again, and you know, he's just good. Sammy Watkins was amazing. The offense just was clicking. Andy Reid had the perfect everything to go against Jacksonville's defense. And Oakland honestly surprised me with how well they played. I picked Denver to win that game. It was one of the games I got wrong. John Gruden's offense looked really good. Tyrell Williams looked really good. Josh Jacobs looked really good. Darren Waller looked really good. Derek Carr looked really good. Their defense played with passion, and Tyreek Hill is not playing. I am going with the Chiefs to win this game. I am going with the Raiders plus 8.5. Now, the reason why I'm going with the Raiders here, they're at home. The Chiefs typically struggle in Oakland. Now, the Chiefs typically win in Oakland, but it's usually very close, including last year versus Patrick Mahomes. I think the Raiders will be able to score and move the ball versus the Chiefs. I think Darren Waller's a matchup issue for this defense. I think Tyrell Williams is a matchup issue for this defense. I think Josh Jacobs will be difficult to deal with. And I think the Raiders can move the ball. And I like what I saw from Derek Carr, and I like what I saw from that offense in general from a scheme perspective from John Gruden. I think he'll have some things to work against this. Plus, the Raiders at home, man, they were motivated. They had those AB chants. It just seemed like there's this AB motivation going on. They're playing with fight. They're playing with passion. They're playing with heart. I think they keep it close. And the biggest reason why I feel like I can take the Raiders here is because Tyreek Hill is not playing. And I've said it many times, and even though Mecole Hardman is basically a big speedster and the replacement for Tyreek Hill, the reason why he was drafted was for cases like this, if Hill gets injured or if he has some personal issues. But Hill is a difference maker, and not only is he a difference maker on the field in terms of what he can do with the ball or how he can get open, but he impacts the rest of this offense. And without him, even with Hardman in there, I feel like the Raiders can be a little bit more focused on a Travis Kelce. They now have a LaMarcus Joyner to match up against a Travis Kelce. Maybe Kelce still wins that matchup, but it won't be as bad as years past. You know, their defense didn't look too bad. And yes, it will probably be a shootout, in all honesty. But I do feel like just Oakland, they play better. The Raiders play better in Oakland. And this is a divisional game. This is one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL. I feel like the Raiders will keep this within, maybe not within a touchdown, but I think it will be around a touchdown. Like, I think it will feel like a 34-27 game where the Chiefs are just too good for the Raiders, but the Raiders keep hanging in the game. And it's kind of surprising people. And that's the way most of these games have been going over the past couple of years. And that's how I feel like this game will go. The Chiefs will win, don't get me wrong, but I feel like the Raiders will hang in this game. And I feel like the Chiefs, kind of like the Dolphins with the Patriots, it's that sort of thing here with this matchup. All right, one more game, and then I will get back to the comment section. Indianapolis versus the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans were very impressive last week versus the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, I guess they played about to standards versus the Chargers. I mean, I don't think many people expected them to win that game versus the Chargers, but I expected them to at least be... Oh, I clicked the wrong thing here. Colts versus Tennessee. So I expected the Colts to be close, and that's exactly what happened. They took the game to overtime. They almost won the game. They had plenty of chances to win the game, and Adam Vinatieri screwed up. So Adam Vinatieri cost them 7 points in that game. He missed 2 field goals. He missed an extra point. Maybe it's time for him to retire. Even GOATs have to retire Adam Vinatieri. As for Tennessee, that defense is real, and they have real coaching when it comes to Mike Vrabel. I have a lot of confidence in him, and Dean Pease is an extremely good defensive coordinator, and the Tennessee offense looks like it has more playmakers. Delaney Walker played well. A.J. Brown is a man. And then you look at Derrick Henry, who had that huge play. They just seem to have more weapons on the offensive side of the ball. I still am not a huge Marcus Mariota fan, but the weapons do help. And like I said, the defense is very, very good. I think they will be able to slow down the rushing attack for the Colts, put the Colts in some awkward positions with Jacoby Brissett, where Jacoby Brissett might get confused by some of the looks that Dean Pease gives him. That's why I'm going with the Titans. And I'm going with the Titans here to win the game and to cover, because I just have a lot of confidence in the Titans at home, where they typically play better. And it's kind of a weird place to play. And even though the Colts have dominated this rivalry, that's mostly been thanks to Andrew Luck. I think Dean Pease will confuse Jacoby Brissett a little bit, give him a couple of looks that force some interceptions, force some turnovers, force some bad throws from Jacoby Brissett. I really like the secondary of Tennessee. Cam Wake looked amazing last week. I like Jarrell Casey in that defensive line to slow down Marlon Mack. And the Colts defense, when I look at them, they're a solid defense, but they're not a great defense. They give up a lot of yards. They let you complete passes underneath. And I feel like that suits what Tennessee wants to do offensively. They're not going to go for many big plays, but they're willing to take the screens, the little dump-offs, and they're willing to run the ball. And I feel like Tennessee will score enough points here to win this game and to cover this game. Now, I would not be shocked if the Colts won this game. I just feel like I'm more confident in Tennessee's defense than I am in Jacoby Brissett. So I am going to go with the Titans to win this game. All right, let's take a look at the comments. Going back. All right. Trivia said, can you analyze all the fantasy teams from the Bottom Line View League? I've said this. No, I'm not going to be doing that. It's a little bit too late. I'm not going to be looking at the teams that were drafted. Realist Cheesehead says Packers win 21-17. Turtle says Pats 29-9. Sammy says Patriots 49-21. Tristan says Pats 70-12. Mike says Pats 31-10. That's what I kind of think it's going to be like. Trivia says Tannehill isn't in Miami anymore, so Pats will win. Realist Cheesehead says Pats 35, Dolphins 17, which that would be a cover. No, that's 18 points. That's less. Ooh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Turtle says I would have it as a blowout if it was in Foxborough. Stacy says Pats win and cover 38-17. Nem Skits says goodbye. See you, Nem Skits. Piped and Drought says Dolphins taking a dub. No Saint says sucker bet. Trivia says 35-23 Pats win. It certainly could be. That's a college spread, says George. Trivia says it was mostly against Tannehill. Brady struggled in Miami. No, he did struggle earlier in his career, too, in Miami as well. Awesome Zone says Patriots win. We don't need to talk about this. James says Brady in Miami is his kryptonite. Edgar says take the points all day, but stay away from this game. Stacy says I think the real question is do the Dolphins start Fitzmagic or Rosen? I think they're starting Fitzmagic. Mike says if you bet -16.5, you're crazy to take +19. That's true. That's true. But I do feel like though, like I felt like I had to do it because it was under 17. But I feel like that 17 number is like a number that is it's often a number where teams win by 17 or win by close to that. But I understand what you're saying, and that's why I ended up changing. Everyone's saying no balls. James says the Dolphins could end up going 0-16. Alexis says, where are the Eagles in your top 10? Also, Cowboys a more impressive win or Eagles a more impressive win in your opinion? Definitely the more impressive win was the Cowboys because of how they won. Even though the Eagles made the comeback, which I'll talk about in a little bit, I do feel like the Cowboys thoroughly dominated their opponent, while the Eagles definitely showed flaws and didn't look as complete as the Cowboys did. So I would say the Cowboys had a better game. As for where are the Eagles, I think I ranked them all the teams today, and I think I had them at 7 or 8. Ultra says Bills 27-17. Awesome Zone says Bills win. Sammy says Giants 22-21. Sebastian says 24-10 Bills. Stacy says Bills win it 17-6. James says Eli Manning is a terrible quarterback. George says I actually like the Bills. Robot Guy says 24-10 Bills. Tristan says Bills 20-10. Mike says 23-16 Bills. Trivia says Giants win 19-17. Ultra says Chiefs 38-24. Tristan says 42-10 Chiefs. Sammy says 31-28 Chiefs. Trivia says really hope the Raiders get an upset. Mike says Chiefs 34-20. 56-3 Sebastian says for the Chiefs. Josh Jacobs has a good game, but Mahomes makes too many plays. Kansas City 34-24. I could see that. What else here? Raiders, I believe, a better team than the Jags. Chiefs still win, though. I'll take the Chiefs 34-27, says Trivia. Roy says PPR pick 2, please. Tyrell, Calvin, Allen Robinson. Ooh. I'm going to go Tyrell and Calvin Ridley. Not positive. I'm positive about Tyrell, but Allen Robinson might be a good start over Calvin. So that one's a personal call. That's tough. That's very tough. Raiders 27-24, says George. No Saint says I'll take Dallas. Wrong one, Mitch, says Trivia. Yeah, I got it. Ebron caught it, says Trivia. All right, Titans scores here. Colts 23-20, Colts 20-19, Titans 27-17. Trivia says you can't ignore the offsides, unnecessary roughness penalty. Let the Chargers get 2 penalties. Awesome Zone says Titans go playoffs, at least win the first game. Titans 45-14 44, says Tristan. Titans win at home, says Stacy, 27-20. 16-9 Titans. Titans are underestimated way too much and prove over and over again they can win, says Far. True Savage says Patriots 3,000, Miami -78. NFL Nerd says, sorry I missed a lot. Did you already talk about the Panthers and Bucks? Yeah, I talked about it first, so go check that out. I think you can scroll back into the video if you want. Ultra says, restating my power rankings, so Mitch sees them. Patriots 1, Chiefs 2, Cowboys 3, Eagles 4, Saints 5, Rams 6, Chargers 7, Packers 8, Vikings 9, Ravens 10. Why are the Ravens so low? That's my question. Alexis says, you still believe it'll be a rematch of Eagles versus Patriots? Also, who do you have winning it and why? I had the Patriots winning the Super Bowl. As for now, I'm sticking with the prediction because it's still week 2, so I'm not really going to change it. Okay. What is next? Cowboys Redskins. The game that I wanted to put up there a little bit earlier. I think in some places this is -5.5 for Dallas. This is also a game where I know Washington plays the Cowboys well, but the Cowboys are so much more talented than the Redskins. And I still can't believe that I know they played the Giants guys, but the Cowboys' offense was so much better than anything we've seen from the Dak Prescott era over the past few years that you have to take Dallas in this game, and you have to take them to cover this. Kellen Moore ran more play action, way more play action than they usually do. They passed on first down at a percentage that only matches the Chiefs, which is something that I love. So I'm very happy with the trend and where the Cowboys are going offensively and how they're running their offense and how they are scheming and the motion and getting receivers open. And Michael Gallup looks phenomenal. Dak looks great. Zeke is just getting going. The offensive line looks good. The defense is great. I think the Redskins had a little bit of a surprise game versus the Eagles because the Eagles were not prepared. But when it comes to this game, it's week 2. The Cowboys will be prepared for this game. And I understand the Redskins, they did surprise me in certain ways, especially offensively with how well their offensive line played, with how well guys like Thompson and McLaren played, and Keenum even. But I will be going with the Cowboys to win and cover. I just think they're a much more talented team, and I really, really, really like what I've seen from the more offense, as well as the Cowboys have a very good defense. I would say it's better than the Eagles, so I feel like I'm more confident in them slowing down the Redskins' offense. Okay, the next game is Seattle at Pittsburgh. Where's Seattle at Pittsburgh? There we go. Seattle at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is -3.5 after getting absolutely shellacked by the New England Patriots in Week 1 on Sunday Night Football. And the Seahawks won, even though it was surprisingly close versus the Bengals at home. Now the Seahawks travel to Pittsburgh. Looking at this game, I am going with the Steelers to win. I am also going with the Steelers to cover. Few things here. Seahawks, I did not like what I saw for the most part versus Cincinnati. As I said earlier with the Bengals, I feel like the Bengals should have won that game. The Bengals defensive line dominated the Seahawks. The Seahawks weren't really able to run the ball that effectively. Russell Wilson was running for his life as usual. And when you look at their defense, their secondary struggled versus Cincinnati. They didn't have much of a pass rush. When I look at Pittsburgh, they lost to New England the way they did because it was New England. And as Ben Roethlisberger said after the game, he said, after being answered, why do the Patriots give you such issues? He said, because they're good. And that's basically what happened. I think people are underestimating the Steelers coming into this game. The Seahawks, I think, will keep this within a touchdown, but I don't even know. I think it will be within 10 points, but I don't know if it will be within a touchdown. I think the Steelers match up very well with the Seahawks. The Steelers can stop the run very well. You saw that last week versus New England. New England is not easy to stop when it comes to running the football. They did that. If they did anything, they did that. The Steelers have a very strong interior pass rush, which I feel like can get after Russell Wilson in this game. When you look at offensively, the Seahawks don't have much of a pass rush. It wasn't good versus a really bad offensive line. How is it going to be good versus Pittsburgh's offensive line? And Seahawks don't have the corners the Patriots do. Juju should have a great game. Moncrief should bounce back. James Washington should be more involved. Maybe they slow down James Conner, but I think Ben has a 300-plus yard game. I think their defense gets after Russell Wilson, and they can stop the run of Chris Carson. I really like the Steelers here at home. This is a game that I just feel like from a matchup perspective does not go well with the Seahawks. I will take the Steelers to win and to cover. All right. The next game is let me see. Do I have the Chicago Bears here? Chicago Bears. Come on. At Denver Broncos. Chicago is -2.5 despite being on the road. Now, if you watched either of these games last week, they were both awful in both of their games. Chicago's defense played well. Offense, atrocious. Okay? Mitchell Trubisky played poorly. Matt Nagy had one of the worst play calling games I've ever seen in my life. Their receivers couldn't get open outside of Allen Robinson, and they did not use Montgomery enough. I made an entire video on that. They need to do those things better. Defensively, they were still good. No worries there. But now they head on the road. They play their old defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, who will kind of know what to do versus their offense in Matt Nagy because he's practiced against it. He knows what they like to do. But also in the same time, Nagy will know in some fashion or form what to do versus Fangio. So I feel like it evens out a little bit there. When you look at Denver, though, Denver played really, really poorly against the Raiders. They look like one of the worst teams in the league. And it wasn't just Joe Flacco. It was a lot of their defense. Their defense did not play nearly as well as I thought it would coming into the season. They were being ran on by Josh Jacobs. They couldn't cover Tyrell Williams. They couldn't cover Darren Waller. And that wasn't all the Raiders. That was partly the Broncos not being very good. Plus, their pass rush wasn't getting in very much. When I look at Chicago, I think they have something to prove this week. I think Matt Nagy has something to prove. I think they get Montgomery the ball more. I think that they're just the more talented team. And I am not going, even if it's in Denver, even if it's in Mile High, I will go with the more talented team here to win and to cover. I think Trubisky has a better game this week. It might not be fantastic, but it will be better. And I think Chicago's defense will destroy the Broncos' offense. So I am going to go with the Bears here in both ways. And the New Orleans Saints at the LA Rams. Nah, you know what? Should I leave this for... No, I'll do it now. I was going to leave it for last, but I'll do it now. And I'm going to finish the picks, and then I'll go to the comments. So I have 3 more games. That's the Saints and the Rams, the Eagles and the Atlanta, and then I have Browns and Jets. So Saints at Rams. This is the game of the week, in my opinion. It's the rematch of the NFC Championship. It's the rematch of the drama. It's the rematch of the story of the pass interference, and they changed the rule and everything. The Rams, like I said, I feel like we're a little bit fortunate to beat the Panthers, but that's what good teams do is they capitalize on your mistakes and they win. So you got to give them credit there. The Saints, they won. Even though, again, another team that maybe shouldn't have won. I mean, if Romeo Crennel doesn't play prevent defense to allow the Saints to get into field goal position, the Texans likely win that game. And they had some big breakdowns defensively. The one thing that's different about this matchup is obvious from last year. It's in LA. And why is that significant? Because Jared Goff is way better at home. The Rams are a much better team at home. And when I look at this matchup, I could go either way. I've been kind of going back and forth. But I honestly feel like the Rams have the number a little bit of the Saints. And I know that people will say, hey, the Saints should have won that NFC Championship game if it wasn't for the pass interference. Well, even with that pass interference, the Rams were the better team that day on the field. I felt like they played better. They dominated the overtime. They dominated the first half. I think they struggled early on with some turnovers and some weird things happening, if I can remember correctly. But I think the Rams when I look at Wade Phillips in this defense, they can do some things to slow down the Saints' offense. I think that they can slow down Michael Thomas better than the Texans could. I think they will have a better plan for Alvin Kamara. Of course, you have to worry about blocking Aaron Donald. I want to give a shout out to Corey Littleton, who's an absolute stud, man. The guy continues to be a beast. And offensively, I do look at the Rams matchups, and I say, I don't know how the Saints are going to be able to stop everything that the Rams throw at them, especially in LA, where, like I said, Jared Goff is better. Now, maybe the Saints take a play out of the Patriots playbook from last year, and they change their game plan, but I just feel like from a matchup standpoint, sure, Lattimore may be able to take away Cooks, but then, Woods and Kupp, and that's a guy who didn't even play in that game. I feel like McVay will be able to create some plays, create some concepts versus the Saints defense to take advantage of them. And I do think the Rams offensive line didn't struggle against the Panthers as much as I thought it would. I feel like they'll be able to be, especially at home, comfortable blocking this front. Todd Gurley looked really good in the fourth quarter of last week's game. Malcolm Brown also looked good. I don't know what it is. I think a lot of it has to do with the home field advantage and the Saints playing on the road and Drew Brees playing on the road. But I feel like the Rams just match up well with the Saints. I feel like they have their number. And even though I want to say the Saints will win because of the revenge factor, I think too many of the football things in my mind are going to picking the Rams. So that's why I'm going to pick the Rams here. And I think at the beginning of the season when I was predicting the records, I also had the Rams winning this game. If that has any consolation at all for just throwing that out there as why I'm sticking with it as well. So I'm going with the Rams here to win. And because it's 3 points, I think those 3 points are very, very, very interesting. This game will certainly be within a touchdown. It might be within 4 points. But because it's only 3 points, I am also going to take the Rams to cover. I think they could win by 4. Now, maybe it's less than the field goal. Maybe the Saints win and, you take the 3 points there. But the Rams are at home, and like I said, I feel like they have more capability of creating big plays down the field, where I just don't know if Drew Brees, at this point, even versus the Texans, did not have many big plays. So I am going to go with the Rams here, and I guess I'll take them to cover. That might be something that I do change going forward, though. All right, 2 more games. The Philadelphia Eagles at the Atlanta Falcons. This is also a game that I have already real-life bet on. I have taken the Eagles to win this game, and I think I've taken them at -1. I like the Eagles a lot in this game. I know that it's in Atlanta, and I know that Atlanta will have a lot will play a lot better at home, and they will have a lot of things to fix from Minnesota, but that's the exact thing. They'll have a lot of things to fix. And the main thing they need to fix is they can't pass block right now, and their defense can't stop the run. So when I look at those two things, the Eagles are coming to town. And really in week number 1, I think this line doesn't indicate that the Eagles did not play in the preseason. So a lot of that, Carson Wentz kind of getting the rust off of his shoulders, I feel like, okay, so the Eagles, they came in and they were shocked by the Redskins. They were like, holy, we weren't expecting this. We thought we would come out faster, but it does help to play in the preseason. The Eagles did not play in the preseason at all. That's why they started slow. And I don't think people are accounting for that, and I don't think the spread's accounting for that. And in this game, I feel like the Eagles will start faster. They'll have a better game plan. They'll come in ready to go. And when I look at it, I don't see the Atlanta Falcons stopping at the Eagles very much. I think Carson Wentz can throw the ball versus Atlanta. I don't love their pass rush in this game versus a dominant offensive line. I think the Eagles can have their way in the running game versus Atlanta the same way the Vikings did. They might not have a Dalvin Cook, but that offensive line is fantastic and can physically be imposing. And if they're giving Carson Wentz all day to find Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz, that's going to be a problem. You also take a look at it, and what's the first thing Atlanta's going to see on tape? They're going to see Deshaun Jackson burning people. That's in the back of their minds. That means they're going to play a little bit off. That means Zach Ertz is going to catch some footballs underneath. That means Alshon Jeffrey will be more available. I just feel like that's going to help the Eagles as the season goes on, that Deshaun Jackson's legitimately Deshaun Jackson. From a defensive standpoint, I do feel like even though the Eagles lost Malik Jackson, they will get a pass rush in this game versus Atlanta because they have a lot of injuries up front. Now, if the Atlanta is able to block, then they can score, and this will end up being a very close shootout. But if the Eagles get a pass rush on Matt Ryan, that's when Matt Ryan, he does those stupid interceptions. For some reason, a lot of them happen in the red zone. Atlanta did not look good from a special teams perspective, where I feel like the Eagles are pretty good in that area of the game. So, overall, even though Julio could have a good game, Calvin Ridley could have a good game, you need time and able to do so, and you need to be able to stop the run. And as a road team, to be able to run the ball will be a big thing for the Eagles. So I'm going with the Eagles to win this game, to cover, and I don't know. I'm worried about Atlanta. The first week performance was not good. There was really no positives coming out of that other than the fact that it was so bad that you have to get better. So it was just very sloppy. I can't really say much when it comes to positive things for Atlanta. I want to see if they improve. I want to see if they fix some things. But I just can't see it happening versus the Eagles, a team that I really liked coming into the season. All right. And the last game is the Monday Night Football game, perhaps the most interesting game of the week, which is Cleveland going to New York. Two teams that lost, two teams with high expectations, two teams with second-year quarterbacks that a lot of people like in Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. The Jets, they had that comeback loss where the Bills came back and they beat them 17-16 at home. So the Jets, they have in the back of their mind, not only did a team just come back on us, so they might think about that in the third or fourth quarter of this game, but also that was at home. So we don't have a lot of faith in our home ability as well. And the Browns pretty much got shellacked past the second quarter. And a lot of that had to do with basically record-setting performance from penalties. I think they had 18 penalties. They had nearly 200 yards of penalties. They set up Baker Mayfield in horrible third and longs where the Titans took advantage of them. The Browns couldn't block as well as you would hope. Their offensive line did not look good. Nick Chubb wasn't involved enough. And honestly, Baker Mayfield made some really bad decisions in that game, which ended up costing them. Also, the Browns did not want to tackle Derrick Henry, which does not help. So looking at both sides of things, I think this will be a very close game. I could see this game being in the 20s, something like 27-24, something like 28-24, something to that degree. I am going to go with the Browns. The reason why I'm going with the Browns here is because I like Baker more than I like Darnold. I like Odell more than I like Crowder and Anderson. And when I look at the matchups here, I don't really see the Jets' corners being able to match up with the Browns' receivers. I think Odell should have a massive game in this game. And I think they're going to get Chubb more involved in this one. I also look at it, I think Denzel Ward can slow down Anderson, which is again going to be a Crowder show for them in the Jets offense. And then from a defensive standpoint, I think, just from an overall standpoint, I feel like the Browns, I picked them to do well this year. I was high on the Jets to some degree, where I had them at like 8-8 or 7-9 to improve, but I had the Browns in the playoffs. And I don't think the Browns are as bad as they performed in week 1 because of the reasons why I stated them. So I am going to go with the Browns here to bounce back, even if it's on the road. I feel like after having a bad performance, they have something to prove. They have a reason to be motivated, and they're not really the target. So I'm going with the Browns with a big game from Odell and a big game from Baker, a bounce back for Baker to win this game 28-24 to win and to cover. All right, those are my predictions for week 2. Let's go to the comment section, and then I will finish off and wrap up the video. If you guys haven't already, Gronk spike the like button. It really helps out the channel. It really helps out getting the video to more people to see it. Also, subscribe to the channel for more NFL content if you haven't already, if you're just tuning into this right now as it's live, or if you're tuning into this later on, subscribe to the channel. Also, guys, a big thing. I know there's 70 plus of you guys watching this right now. A big thing is you guys have to press the notification bell. Some people don't always get the videos from the channel, and the way to get the videos every single time, the way to be informed when I'm going live, is to hit the notification bell. So make sure you hit that notification bell, because that's an absolutely huge thing to help out your YouTubers that you like. And if I'm one of them, then by hitting the notification bell, you will get my videos instantly. And that is going to be way better for you as a fan of the channel. All right. Peter says, hello from Germany. I missed that one last time, so I want to give him a shout out if he's still here. What's going on, Peter? Does Belichick coach past Tom Brady's retirement? Asks Julian. I will say yes, because I feel like he has something to prove still without Tom Brady. Now, that obviously depends how long Tom Brady plays, but I'll say that much. Okay. Patriots Cowboys Super Bowl, says Henry. Tristan says Patriots win 2 Super Bowls in a row. Did you already do Chargers and Lions? I did Chargers and Lions, yeah. Okay, let's go to the Steelers predictions. Okay, first, Stacy has something to say. Skins at home versus the Cowboys always play tough. I agree with that. But an extra week back for Zeke, and he will go off. I'll say Cowboys win big, 31-14. Okay, I agree with it. Sammy says Steelers 2019. Mike says Steelers 28-24. Tristan says Seahawks 35-21. Stacy says Seahawks-Steelers sounds like a low-scoring game. I'll give Steelers at home 17-13. Tristan says Steelers 35-21. Turtle says Seahawks 30-26. Low-scoring until a shootout in the fourth. No Saint says Pittsburgh is 8-8. Kev says 34-27. Russell Wilson 4 touchdowns. Deshaun Drakeford says picking Seattle 23-17. Matthew says I need 8 games that are for sure wins against the spread. Any love? For sure 8 of them? Holy, that's hard to do. Now I did get 9 of them right, but that's last week. But that's just you know, all of the games. That's not me picking 9. So, if I had to pick 8, which I don't know if I can, I would pick the Panthers. I would pick the Ravens. Already. Bills, Eagles. I would pick, Cowboys. I don't know how many that is already. I would probably pick the Bears. You can always hope on the Patriots. I mean, the Patriots are always very good against the spread. So if you're not sold on one of these games, then the Patriots. But 8 is a lot, man. And I also like the Steelers, so I would throw the Steelers in there as well. I hope that's enough of them. I don't know. But those are the ones that I probably like the most. Week 2 is very tough. Very tough. Okay. Kev says, Mitch, it's week 1. Seattle always struggles since 2013. That's true. I will give the Seattle this, and I continue to say this. Seattle, when they do win, it's always very close. They never blow anybody out. All right. Ultra says Steelers 31-26. Okay. Cleveland wins 27-10. Good point by James that's a 10 a.m. game Seattle time, even though I don't think it matters as much in today's day and age, but it still does matter a little bit. Stacy says Chicago 21-16. I like that score. Sammy says Bears 21-12. I think you guys are pretty accurate on these. Mike's 21-16. I think it will be in that 20-10 range, that sort of thing there. What else? KJ Wright, Wagner, those guys aren't pass rushers, bro. Clowney's a pass rusher. Deshaun says going with the Bears by 8.5 points. Okay. Mike says Rams 28-21. Turtle says Saints 34-28. Sammy says Rams 28-24. Free Flow says Rams 28-20. Saints get revenge, says Stacy 33-24. Rob says Saints 31-20. Jags, what's up? I'm here. I already picked the Jags game. Go check it out. Ultra says Rams 26-23 OT. Saints 42-41. Don't worry, guys. If you're late, you can always go back and watch after the video is up. Rams 31-28, says Kevin Durkant. Deshaun says Miami Dolphins win. What game am I streaming? I don't know yet. Eagles 31-10, says Rob. Sammy says Falcons 24-20. Eagles in a close game 27-23, says Stacy. Tristan says Eagles 42-35. Deshaun says I'm taking Atlanta to rebound from their loss 33-30. Falcons get revenge 24-21. Philly is legit, says Kevin. Also, I will say, it seems like the Eagles have Atlanta's number recently. That I do know for a fact, for all the people that are saying I don't know the fact about the Saints one. Andrew says I like the Eagles in this one. Deshaun says Philly is a really legit team. Saints says I was at the NFC Championship. They didn't outplay the Saints at all. Turnovers were takeaways. Turnovers were takeaways. Yeah, turnovers are takeaways. I didn't say Ryan is regressing. Maybe someone else said that, but I didn't say Ryan was regressing. I just felt he played bad. My 49ers will take it out on Cincinnati 27-17, says the Geek Freak. $31-13 Cleveland, says Mike. 31-10 Jets. Holy. Deshaun says 27-22 Browns. Skins will beat the Cowboys 24-20, says the Greek Freak. Breeze had a bad first half and a great second half. Is that in the NFC Championship? Brown says 28. He did throw that interception in overtime, just so you know. Browns 28-27. Ultra says, I'm really starting to hate the Browns. Who is deleting all this stuff? Good Stream says no Saint. All right. I think that's everything. Will Antonio Brown be placed on the commissioner exempt list? I will say no. Because nobody ever has been put on the exempt list from a civil case. That's what I'm going with. But I'm not a lawyer. Crypto says, thoughts on Thielen or Diggs this week? Diggs is banged up, but I do feel like Diggs will have the better matchup for who he's playing against. Thielen is solid. You have to start Thielen, but I don't think Thielen is going to have like a fantastic game because I do think Jari Alexander will be lined up against him. But again, they'll probably pass the ball more this week than they did last week, so that also helps. Do you think Brown's going to play this year? I do think so because I personally, I don't want to say that the woman who put the claims on Brown is false or it's not serious, but it seems fishy to me is all I'll say, and I'm kind of leaning towards that Brown is telling the truth, that he is innocent. That's just my personal opinion from what I've seen, so don't get mad at me for that. Obviously, sexual harassment is a big deal, so I'm not trying to say that it's not. I'm just saying that I believe in what Brown is saying, and the things don't really add up. So that's kind of my thinking. So I do think over the next week or so we'll find out the truth. Hopefully the next week or so, maybe more, but hopefully, and Brown will be able to play. But regardless, whether he is innocent, they prove him to be innocent, it's still going to suck for him. Because those things don't go away. Even if you're proven innocent, people still remember the rumors. People still remember that somebody claimed that you did something that you maybe didn't. And it sticks around with you. That's why I feel like it's such a serious thing for both sides. Because if you did it, you're a dick and you're a horrible person. But if you didn't do it and someone claimed you did it and you're being set up, people still think you did it. That's why it sucks. All right, guys, I will end there. Those were my week 2 picks. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, again, Gronk spike the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos just like this. It's Mitch of TheBottomLineView. Peace out.